And Adam, take it away.
Thank you, Maura. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Adam Levine, and I am Executive Director here at the New York Metropolitan Transportation Council, or NYMTC. As the region's metropolitan planning organization, NYMTC provides a collaborative planning forum to address transportation-related issues and develop regional plans through our members' shared vision for the transportation network that connects New York City, Long Island, and the lower Hudson Valley. I thank you all for participating in today's Brown Bag. Please note that this webinar is eligible for one certification maintenance credit from the American Planning Association. You will find more information about this in the chat. Today we have a presentation by Gregory Francis on Vision Zero implementation in Hoboken, New Jersey. Greg is a planner in the City of Hoboken's Department of Transportation and Parking, where he coordinates the city's shared mobility programs, Complete Streets implementation, and the Vision Zero initiative. Quite a busy gentleman, which aims to eliminate all traffic injuries and deaths by 2030. He is also an advocate for sustainable communities that promote walkable and bikeable streets, so he feels fortunate that he is able to align his professional and personal goals. There will be an opportunity for questions following the presentation. Please type your questions into the WebEx chat box, and we will address them during the question and answer portion towards the end. I'm also going to ask you to let us know via the chat where you are joining us from. This helps us learn more about our audiences and plan future Brown Bag events. Speaking of, I want to let you know we have 2 additional Brown Bags coming up in the next couple of months, so please mark your calendars. On Wednesday, June 12th at noon, the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission will be presenting on the evolving mega region, revisioning freight development and mobility in Eastern Pennsylvania. And after a break for the summer, on Thursday, September 26th at noon, the New York City Department of City Planning will be presenting on their zero carbon zoning initiative. More information on these will be forthcoming. I will now turn it over to Greg Francis. Greg.
Thank you for the introduction, Adam, and thank you for NYMTC for having me present on behalf of the City of Hoboken. Let me share my presentation. All right, so as Adam mentioned, I'll be talking about how the City of Hoboken's Vision Zero initiative is currently being implemented with regard to our Vision Zero action plan and some of the projects that we've been working on and plan to work on over the next year. So if people aren't familiar with Hoboken, it's a 1.2 square mile city directly across the river from Midtown Manhattan. It has 60,000 residents. Most people commute to New York City via transit. It's very walkable, it's bikeable, it's flat. 40% of our street miles have bike lanes. We have a bike share program that's part of the City Bike program. Before COVID, as I mentioned, 60% of residents commuted by transit, that was the highest percentage in the United States. Our Vision Zero program was launched in 2019, but we've had zero traffic deaths since 2017. And it's really important to note that, before Vision Zero, we were still working on a lot of the same principles that underpin Vision Zero currently. We had a complete streets policy that was adopted in 2010. So since over the past 14 years, we've installed 150 curb extensions, more than 150 curb extensions. Some of them are concrete, some of them are landscaped, and some of them include green infrastructure. We've installed 80 painted curb extensions. As I mentioned, we have an extensive bike facility network. We have 14 pedestrian crossing islands, 11 raised crosswalks and raised intersections. And in 2022, we implemented a 20-mile-per-hour citywide speed limit. And just last year, every year we have a daylighting program, and I'll explain more about that in a later slide, but we daylit 31% of all of our intersections just in 2023. So again, this is really the core component of our Vision Zero initiative is the implementation of our Complete Streets resolution. So our Vision Zero goal is to eliminate all traffic deaths and injuries by 2030. Through the leadership of Mayor Bala, an executive order was signed in 2019, which launched our Vision Zero initiative, created a Vision Zero task force. And in 2021, the task force was renewed, and the implementation of the Vision Zero action plan became the focus of that executive order. Our public outreach process for Vision Zero has been extensive. As you know, the City of Hoboken is a very engaged community, and I'll go through some of that in a later slide. And then as part of this, we conducted our most comprehensive crash analysis for 5 years from 2014 to 2018. And all this helped develop our action plan, which was adopted by the Hoboken City Council unanimously in 2021. So what we learned from our crash analysis was that crashes that result in serious injury or death are impacting pedestrians and bicyclists at a higher rate than other users. So we found that pedestrians and bicyclists only account for 8% of all crashes, but accounted for 40% of those resulting in serious injury or death. During this period, we had 3 deaths in this 5-year period from 2014 to 2018. None were in 2018, obviously, but they were all pedestrians. And then 88% of our crashes were that involved bicyclists and pedestrians were at crosswalks at intersections. So this crash analysis is an important foundation that I'll refer back to throughout the rest of the presentation. So our Vision Zero initiative, as most are, is guided by the safe system approach. So the safe system approach considers redundancy to be crucial. Death and serious injury is unacceptable. Humans make mistakes. Humans are vulnerable. Responsibility is shared, and safety is proactive. So those are the primary components of the safe system approach. And then within that, our Vision Zero action plan is organized around promoting safe road users, safe vehicles, safe speeds, safe roads, and post-crash care. And I'll go through that in more detail, especially as it relates to our Vision Zero initiative in Hoboken. So the safe systems approach is a little bit different from what cities have traditionally done, including Hoboken. So instead of preventing crashes, we're preventing deaths and serious injuries. Instead of improving human behavior, we're designing for human mistakes and limitations. Instead of controlling speeding, we're looking at ways to reduce the impact of speeds, especially on crashes with pedestrians and bicyclists, or vulnerable road users. Instead of putting responsibility on individuals, it's a shared responsibility throughout the entire roadway system. Instead of reacting based on crash history, we're proactively identifying and addressing risks. So our Vision Zero action plan, which has over 100 action items, as I mentioned, was adopted in 2021 and is really organized around the safe system approach. So it's focused on action items that promote safe streets, safe speed, safe and smaller vehicles, safe behaviors, post-crash investigation and care, and data-driven decisions. And so through the rest of the presentation, I'm going to focus on the goals for each of these different components of the safe system approach, and then some of the priority action items that we've implemented. So safe streets, the goal as it relates to our Vision Zero initiative is to implement street designs that maximize street safety for the most vulnerable roadway users. And so below are 3 examples of recent projects where we focused on redesigns. The 2 pictures on the picture on the left and the picture in the middle were implemented through our annual roadway resurfacing program. We installed pedestrian refuge islands, high visibility crosswalks in front of a school, in a multi-use trail in a future park. And then the pedestrian refuge island also manages speeds through horizontal deflection. And then the intersection that's raised in the center is right next to a park with a playground, and it's right next to our high school as well. And so this is a raised intersection that not only slows vehicle speeds through the intersection, but increases the visibility of pedestrians crossing here. Again, protecting our most vulnerable roadway users. And then the project on the right, which is the Sinatra Drive redesign, is an ongoing project that we hope to start construction later this year. Includes a 12-foot wide 2-way bikeway. So again, providing additional protection for bicyclists and separating bicycle users from pedestrians that are using the path along the river here, along the Hudson River. It will include 5 race crossings to, again, promote slower speeds and also raise the visibility of pedestrians that are crossing along this roadway. So safe speed is focused on reducing driver speeds to lower the frequency and harm of crashes. Again, so some examples of how we've done that These two projects were quick build projects. So they are low cost projects that we were able to implement relatively quickly. The project on the left is along the south waterfront in Hoboken. It's a 4-block stretch where there's a lot of pedestrians, there's a lot of cyclists. It's a beautiful waterfront park area with restaurants and offices, and connects to our main transit hub, Hoboken Terminal. So what we did here was we installed flexible delineators in paint to create chicanes. So as you approach the intersection, the chicanes force you to slow down to 10 miles per hour and proceed through the intersection slowly. It also promotes visibility of pedestrians crossing the street here. And then this is repeated at 4 intersections along this stretch of the roadway. And the project on the right is a good example of how we've leveraged bicycle infrastructure to help promote lower speeds. So this project not only added a two-way protected bike lane that connects Jersey City and Hoboken, but narrowed travel lanes to help reduce speeds through one of our high crash corridors. One of the most important action items that we've implemented was the reduction of the speed limit citywide from 25 to 20 miles per hour. So we know that there's a significant reduction in the chance of severe injury or death if a crash happens at 20 miles per hour. So the graphic on the left, many of you are probably familiar with a version of this graphic, but it shows that at 30 miles per hour, a pedestrian has a 50% chance of a fatality or severe injury. But at 20 miles per hour, there's a 25% chance, so the risk is halved. We also know that the visibility from the driver's seat is reduced as speed increases. So at 20 miles per hour, there's clear visibility, relatively clear visibility, and that reduces all the way to almost no visibility. And in Hoboken, this is really important because our roads are very narrow and buildings are typically built up all the way to the property line. So sight lines at intersections, especially, are very narrow. There's parking on both sides. And again, this also relates back to reducing the kinetic energy. The stopping distance at 25 miles per hour is 85 feet, and you can reduce that stopping distance to 63 feet at 20 miles per hour. So this refers to the reaction time of a driver when they're approaching a pedestrian that's crossing the street, a bicyclist, or any other obstacle in the roadway that may come unexpectedly. So to implement this 20-mile-per-hour speed limit, we studied speeds at 22 locations across the city. So these are representative streets. We installed speed detection and collected speeds. This map is showing those 22 locations in 2021. We collected these speeds on two-way streets, four-lane streets, one-way streets, and we collected it on city roads and county roads. And then we used the FHWA, MUTCD, and NACDO methodologies to get to a 20-mile-per-hour citywide speed limit, which went into effect in 2022. So it was important for us to set a citywide speed limit of 20 miles per hour. And to help implement this, we've installed speed radar feedback signs at 8 gateways. So Hoboken is surrounded by the city of Jersey City on 2 sides, and Union City and Weehawken, and then the Hudson River. So it's a very dense urban area. So sometimes it's difficult to tell when you're entering Hoboken. So we made it really important for drivers to understand that you're entering Hoboken. There's a citywide speed limit of 20 miles an hour. Here's your speed. Slow down to make sure that you're not going faster than 20 miles per hour. And then to help educate residents and other people who are in Hoboken, we've installed these educational ads on 20 screens at our 10 EV charging stations that are installed curbside throughout the city. So again, this is an educational campaign. So it shows that 20 miles per hour is the law. And it also helps explain the risk of a pedestrian getting struck at 30 miles per hour compared to 20 miles an hour. So again, just explaining to people that this is a choice that you need to make to help protect pedestrians and bicyclists. And then this project received the ITE Met Sections 2023 Vision Zero Award. So in this photo, here we are accepting the award. This is on the right is our Director of Transportation and Parking, Ryan Sharp, and on the left is our City Engineer, Olga Garcia. So these are the core members of our Vision Zero team in Hoboken. Another component of the safe systems approach is promoting safe and smaller vehicles. So our goal is to ensure that vehicles on Hoboken streets are as safe as possible for vulnerable road users. And so, 1.2 square mile city is very, it's hard for us to, um, you know, promote change beyond our borders. But what we're doing in Hoboken is we're investing in micromobility, and we're also investing in our vehicle fleet to ensure that it has the most advanced safety features. It's right sized. So instead of large SUVs, we've scaled down when we can to sedans, because we know that vehicle speed, we know that vehicle size does impact the severity of a crash. So here's just some examples. The city of Hoboken, like I mentioned before, is part of the City Bike program, and we spend $200,000 annually to support the City Bike operations in Hoboken. And we do a lot to promote micromobility as the first choice, especially for transit commuters, to discourage congestion and large vehicles from entering this area around Hoboken Terminal where there's lots of pedestrians. And as an example of a micromobility vehicle that's part of our fleet, we have scooters, we have e-bikes that our city employees use to get around across the city. And then on the right is an example of how we've leveraged a leasing program to upgrade our municipal vehicle fleet to ensure that we have the right size vehicles with the most advanced safety features. Safe behaviors is another part of the safe system approach. And our goal in Hoboken is to empower residents to move safely through the city and to take action in support of Vision Zero. And a big part of that is the widespread intersection daylighting program that we have. We basically, in the state of New Jersey, there's a law that prohibits parking within 25 feet of a crosswalk. And in Hoboken, it's especially important to enforce this law. As I mentioned, buildings are very close to the roadway. There's a lot of pedestrians, and there's parking on both sides of the street. And these tend to, parking can block visibility at intersections. So we've used the daylighting program to promote micromobility by adding bicycle corrals, city bike stations in this daylighting area. And then where we can, we've also installed curb extensions and some curb extensions with green infrastructure to also promote some of our sustainability goals and resiliency goals across the city. And as part of our Vision Zero initiative, we have a Vision Zero pledge. We've had over 200 residents sign this Vision Zero pledge so far, and it helps to raise awareness of the types of behaviors that are contributing to fatal and injury-causing crashes. Another part of the safe behaviors component is curbside management. So right now we're embarking on, we know that in urban areas like Hoboken, I'm sure some of you are experiencing this where you live and work, the growth of e-commerce, whether it's food deliveries, whether it's, ordering through Amazon or the Postal Service. There's been a huge influx of package deliveries, and these vehicles tend to be large, and they don't usually have spaces to pull over, such as loading zones where they need them. So what happens is they tend to just pull over at the intersections, which blocks visibility. And you can see here in this picture is an example from Hoboken where the visibility at the intersection is completely blocked. The crosswalk is blocked. And this driver that's turning and this pedestrian that's crossing the street, it's very difficult for them to see each other until it's almost too late. So we also have issues where deliveries are blocking our bike lanes and our bus stops, which is forcing people that are riding bikes, our vulnerable road users, into the travel lanes, creating these unexpected maneuvers for drivers, which can increase risk for these people. So how we're addressing this, this is an important part of our Vision Zero initiative, is through a new planning effort called the Curb Reimagined, which is Hoboken's first ever curbside management parking and mobility plan. A big part of this is creating a digital clone of our curb regulations so we can understand where loading zones are, for example. And if we get complaints from our parking enforcement officers, the police department, or residents about instances of double parking, parking in crosswalks, we can refer back to this digital clone and see if there's loading zones. Throughout the day, we can see how the regulations are changing. So a loading zone might only be in effect in the morning, but in the afternoon, we might see a lot more double parking. So this helps us really understand what the existing curbside uses are, and we can adapt, according to, where the need is to promote safety and our resiliency and sustainability goals as well. And as part of this, we're also trying to promote mobility as well through protected bicycle lane pilot. We know that protected bicycle lanes are curbside. And when we've tried to implement them in Hoboken previously, we heard feedback from residents that the bike lanes are currently used for double parking. So it's a part of addressing the curbside holistically and ensuring that when we're adding bike lanes, we're also looking at ways to provide parking and loading areas as well. And then we'll also be working with a company to install sensors that will tell us in real time how the curbs are being used. So we'll be able to tell how our loading zones are being used, when bus stops are being blocked, bike lanes are being blocked, and other ways that we can use data to really understand how we can promote safety and ensure that our curb is being maximized. And our public participation part of this plan has just launched last week. And if you go to hobokennj.gov/curb management, there's an entire website dedicated to this initiative. There's a video, there's a survey, and there's a feedback map as well. So this is an ongoing effort for the city of Hoboken. With post-crash investigation and care, our goal is to learn from crashes to improve street safety in Hoboken and better care for traffic violence victims. So I know there's a lot on this slide. On the left is our internal procedure for responding to serious injury or deadly crashes to ensure accountability and guide our external communications when necessary. So we want to be able to respond to crashes, especially those involving deadly and serious injury crashes or an injury crash involving a vulnerable road user. We also want to make sure that the information that the public receives is accurate and timely as well. And then on the right, when a crash does happen, we want to make sure that residents understand that they have support. And so our Office of Constituent Affairs is working with Families for Safe Streets to provide resources to crash victims so they can understand what's available to them in terms of support and other people that they can talk to that have experienced crashes as well. And again, data-driven decisions is an important part of the safe system approach, and our action plan. The action items related to this are to ensure that data on Vision Zero progress is continually collected and used to improve upon our Vision Zero efforts. An example of this is our how we provide updates on infrastructure investments to residents, and also just to understand internally where we're investing in this type of infrastructure. And so this dashboard I created, the link at the bottom, it's a little bit, it's a short link, but this is something that's available on our Vision Zero website as well. It shows where we've made improvements to our high crash intersections in the last year, and where we've made improvements to our priority intersections that were identified in our street design guide. And each type of improvement has a pin on the map, and you can click on it and you can learn more about when it was installed, what it's supposed to do to promote safety, and other information as well. So it's really important to understand that while Hoboken's a small 1.2 square mile city, we do have multi-jurisdictional coordination that we have to undergo to promote these projects and get these projects completed. So we know that 25% of our street mileage is under the jurisdiction of Hudson County, and so the map on the left shows the Hudson County roads in red, and the map on the right shows our high crash network. And so there is a significant overlap between roads that are under Hudson County's jurisdiction, as well as roads that lead into our neighboring cities of Weehawken, Union City, and Jersey City. So we have to coordinate with those communities as well. And the protected bike lane that I showed, that was part of the safe speed slide, is an important part of that, where we coordinated with our colleagues in Jersey City to get a short stretch of protected bike lane installed to connect our protected bike lane networks in both cities. And a really important part of that coordination is through our Vision Zero task force, which was again established by an executive order from the mayor in 2019. And it includes not only city staff, but also our partners at Hudson County, through the planning department at Hudson County and the county engineer, and as well as Jersey City, which has had a Vision Zero initiative for about a year before us. And so we have an exchange where I'm on their task force and they have someone on our task force. It helps us exchange ideas and coordinate projects more effectively. So an exciting project that we're about to start is the Willow Avenue Vision Zero Improvements Project. We received $1.4 million from the NJDOT Transportation Alternatives Program in 2023 to help address our high crash corridor, Willow Ave, which you can see on the right. Is very different from the rest of Hoboken. If you're familiar with Hoboken, there's a lot of one-way streets. They're narrow, but this is an example of a corridor that's one of our remaining corridors that needs significant upgrades for multimodal safety. It's also a major bus corridor. It has a grocery store, schools, daycares, and also connects directly to the Lincoln Tunnel and our neighbors in Weehawken and Union City. So we're looking at ways to promote safety for multimodal users, protected bike lanes, improve pedestrian crossings, traffic signal improvements to also improve safety for drivers and pedestrians. And then our public engagement for this project is supposed to kick off later this summer. So that's it for my presentation, and I guess I'll take some questions. So thank you.
Thanks, Greg. So I hope folks can take the opportunity to drop questions in the chat. I'm happy to get us started, but we'd love to hear some more. Unless, Stephanie, are there any questions in the chat yet?
Not at the moment. We do have people putting in their locations of where they're calling in from, but no questions at this time.
All right, great. I hope people can keep dropping their location info in, but we are looking for some questions. So I know we got one just now from Jeffrey, but I'll just kick us off if it's all right. So I think at this point, it seems like it's reasonably successful. You've probably gotten a lot of buy-in, but still, I know from the time that I used to spend in Hoboken, I moved to Jersey City, oh gosh, almost 15 years ago, and since further out in Jersey, but that it was always, the reputation was that Hoboken was always difficult, for parking. And you're, I guess, taking, not taking parking away, but certainly redistributing it, or I don't know how you want to describe it, your curb management and with some of the other work that's gone on. And I kind of have mentioned this to you earlier, and I was wondering if you could revisit it. How cooperative has the business community been for the efforts that you're undertaking?
Yeah, I'll just show this. So this is our digital curb, a screenshot of that on the right, and the green lines show all of the parts of the city that are dedicated to parking. So it's a mixture between metered parking and resident parking. And so as you can see, a lot of the roadway space is dedicated to parking. It's difficult in a city as dense as Hoboken to accommodate parking everywhere for everyone. So what we're trying to do with the curb reimagined is look at ways that we can improve access where loading is needed. So we can also have loading zones that meet the needs of businesses, and also the delivery services that are delivering in Hoboken. So they don't have to get a parking ticket for parking illegally in a bike lane, or parking at a crosswalk. So we're trying to, have a more flexible curb, one that's more that is really meeting the needs of the community today, and also is flexible for the needs in the future as well. So this project has just started, and I think it's very exciting because it's an important link between safety and also you know, just understanding how urban areas in the future are going to have to adapt to this growth in deliveries and other types of activities that are now happening at the curb. We have in-street dining as well. We have parklets. So all of these things are really important to consider as well. Adam, you're muted.
Thanks, Greg. One more question for me, and then we'll jump into the chat. I see the chat is getting more active. So, I mean, at this point, you're 6 or 7 years into the effectiveness, the apparent and pretty obvious effectiveness of the program, but 14 years into some of the changes that you. So I think at this point, a lot of people probably are appreciative of all the work that you've done in Vision Zero and the other work that you're doing. But what were some of the early wins that you had? Maybe going back to that 14-year kickoff, in terms of getting people to see that you're really doing some really good things and it was effective, and therefore you could build that support that helps build the momentum.
Yeah, so I think there's two things that I'll talk about. Is the first is basically using low cost, easy to install materials, flexible delineator posts, painted curb extensions, so that people could experience the benefits without the city having to invest significant time and effort and money into these types of low cost safety improvements. And then the coordination with Hudson County that happened for the Observer Highway project that you can see in this photo here was really important as well, because it was an important link between Hoboken Terminal, Jersey City, and other parts of Hoboken, and really helped improve safety by adding a protected bike lane, two-way protected bike lane, improve pedestrian safety. There's bus stop pull-ins. So this was really one of the first projects that showed the community that you can redesign a corridor to really improve safety.
Very cool. All right, I'm gonna turn it over to Stephanie for our very active chat. Stephanie.
Yeah, we just got a lot of questions that came in. The first one, just sort of up at the top, when identifying high crash corridors, do you use flows/traffic volume to relativize the numbers?
I think our high crash network is just purely based on the number of crashes at those intersections. We didn't look at crash volumes. We are it's a relatively small city. I will say that our go to the map of it. Our high crash network does include a lot of streets that have high vehicle traffic, but we're really focused on promoting safety for our most vulnerable road users, so pedestrians and bicyclists. And we know that those volumes are high all throughout Hoboken. So we did not look at vehicle volumes as part of this high crash analysis.
Thank you. What methods did you use to determine an appropriate speed limit for Hoboken?
We used 3 different methodologies. We used the FHWA city limits. We used the MUTCD, the 85th percentile measurement, and we also used the NACDO methodology that looks at ways to set speeds based on activity levels and conflict density. So through that, we were able to, we also used some engineering judgment as well to set this 20-mile-per-hour speed limit. So we know that there's parts of the city that have currently low activity levels, but are primed for major redevelopment projects. So we're trying to ensure that in the future that those speeds are, reflecting the increased volumes of vulnerable road users, such as pedestrians and bicyclists. And we also just wanted to set a citywide speed limit because drivers need to. The consistency really helps drivers understand the importance of this, why we need a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit to improve safety.
Great, thank you. Another question: how do you ensure support from city elected leaders?
Well, one thing is we really engage with their constituents, and we also work directly with city council members before we're doing any of these major projects. So we really are, it's important for us to focus on community engagement, and also just making sure that council members feel like they have a stake in improving safety across the city as well. And over the past 14 years, the city has been implementing these types of improvements, and so people really appreciate them and advocate to their council members to have these implemented. And then again, the former Mayor Don Zimmer and the current Mayor Ravi Bala have really been supportive of this work, and it really helps having leadership support this as well.
Great, thank you. Another question, might the city-owned parking decks offer some reduced price parking at peak times, such as evenings? It's very expensive to park in those lots currently.
There is currently a discounted parking for overnights for residents that have a resident permit. It's $5 to park overnight. And through the curb management plan, the curb reimagined, we are looking at the off-street supply as it relates to the on-street supply, including pricing as well to encourage usage of those off-street lots and parking decks.
Thank you. We have Jeff Olson in Saratoga. This is great. How did your path make these changes happen? And how can the cultural / multimodal changes you are creating be replicated in other places?
Thanks for the question, Jeff. I grew up in Saratoga. I think a lot of this is relatively low cost and has multiple benefits. So, for instance, our curb extensions and our daylighting program promote. We have parking areas for bicyclists, for city bike docks. So a lot of cities have needs for bicycle parking. They have needs for promoting resiliency with these curb extensions, with rain gardens, excuse me, in these areas, and city bike. So I think they're small, and also I think it's important, when you're doing a roadway resurfacing project, which every city does annually, that you're looking at ways to promote safety. So one thing that we do is, our Complete Streets resolution focused on this, and it's something that we carry on today, is that when we're repaving a street, whether it's from an underground utility project, which requires curb to curb repaving, or the money we receive annually from NJDOT or grants, that we're really focusing on restoring the street in a way that there's high visibility crosswalks, bicycle infrastructure, that the visibility at the intersections is very clear. So it's something that a lot of cities are already spending money on these types of projects, and these added benefits are relatively low cost.
Excellent, thank you. Another question, just curious if any federal funds have gone into your planning or project implementation for the wide range of safety projects being pursued. If they're primarily local funds, is there a local sales tax or other source of funding?
Well, one thing is, we have received federal funding for several projects, and we received federal funding for the Observer Highway project that I showed, which was one of our first projects to include protected bike lanes. Our Sinatra Drive project is including federal funding. The TAP, we've received federal funding through the TAP program. So we have been working with the federal funding model to implement these projects. And then we also have a parking utility, so we're able to reinvest the money that we receive from parking revenue in a lot of these projects as well, to help meet the community match requirement. So this is a priority of the city, and so we're investing in a way that shows that.
Thank you. Next question, Elisa Kyle, Long Island, New York. How much convincing had to be done within City Hall? Were elected officials and staff on board in the beginning?
I think a lot of when we got to the point where we were in 2019, when we had our executive order for Vision Zero, there was little convincing that was needed, because we had a decade of Complete Streets implementation. People, our city council members, they're pedestrians, they're cyclists. They understand. Everyone in Hoboken understands these benefits. They may not be as supportive of some of these things, but when they're able to experience it, and they hear from from other community members how important these investments are. It helps build support. So we didn't have to, we still have to do some convincing. It's not 100%. Everyone's on board all the time, but it really helps for people to be able to experience this, and it takes time to create that culture. And we've been working on this for 14 years and potentially longer.
Thank you so much. Just a comment. Thank you for framing your presentation around the safe system approach. Great work and great presentation. Next question. What role have local nonprofits played in your program?
Well, we have our Hoboken Business Alliance is representing the business community. They're a special improvement district citywide, and they are it's part of the Curb Reimagined. They are an important stakeholder because they are working directly with the business community. So they've been an important stakeholder also in promoting streetscaping projects. We have Bike Hoboken, so we have an advocacy group for the city of Hoboken. There's a Hudson County Complete and Safe Streets group. So we've been working with community advocates. They have a seat on our task force. Our Business Alliance has a seat on our task force. So it's important for us to work with these nonprofits, and we continue to do it.
Excellent, thank you. Next question. This all sounds great, but what are your limitations? What would you like to do that you cannot do due to resource or political limitations?
I think the geometry of our streets makes things like protected bike lanes very difficult. As I mentioned, through the Curb Reimagined, we're looking at how we can provide protected bike lanes in a way that also doesn't forget that people need to load and unload goods and passengers in the street. So we don't want to create additional safety issues. So our streets are very narrow, and it's difficult for us to implement a protected bike lane network when you have a 35-foot wide street with parking on both sides. So those are some of our limitations that I can think of just immediately. It's just the size of our streets, which is also it's also a benefit because the streets are narrow, people drive slower, crossing distances are shorter. But for things like protected bike lanes, it's relatively difficult.
Great, thank you. A follow-up question to the federal funds question. If you use federal funds for smaller scale improvements, were you able to get state and FHWA approval for your implementation in a timely manner?
That's a difficult question for me to answer. I wasn't working directly on we had a project, TAP project on Newark Street in Hoboken, where we were able to install a one-way protected bike lane and curb extensions, these relatively small, and a pedestrian refuge island, these relatively small safety improvements with federal money. And I believe we were able to do it in a timely way, but I know that's definitely feedback we get from other cities and other stakeholders is the federal processes can slow things down. But I don't think I can answer that question, I think, comprehensively enough.
Thank you very much. A question, I believe, for us, Jerry. Will this recorded presentation be made available to share? It would be great to share this local success with other communities. Thank you, City of Hoboken and NYMTC, for sharing. I believe the answer is yes.
The answer is yes.
Posted onto our YouTube channel.
Yep.
And then we have a comment. Thank you. Fantastic takeaways. So thank you very much. And that is the end of our comments and chat questions for right now.
All right, I'll give Stephanie a moment to catch her breath, and our folks to give a couple more moments to type questions into the chat. I'll pick this one up. So how has it been like working with enforcement? Enforcement's always an issue with the speed limits or with the bike lanes or with anything that you're trying to do on the streets. Has it been a good partnership with the local law enforcement?
Yeah, our police department, they're on our task force. The traffic commander for the city of Hoboken is on our task force. They've been working, before we had Vision Zero, they were working on campaigns to promote pedestrian safety, to ensure, stop compliance, so people can cross the street safely. So they've been engaged in this initiative from the beginning. And I think, having the support of the mayor and the police chief, and our director of public safety, is really important, and has helped us, work smoothly with our police department, our fire department as well.
There's
Cool.
a follow-up question to that. What is the feedback from fire and emergency departments? Just jumping off what you just said.
Yeah, I mean, it's important for us to engage with our fire and emergency departments, because we learn from them what their needs are, and we can adapt these projects these things that we're proposing, to accommodate their needs without really compromising the overall intent, which is to improve safety for the most vulnerable road users. So it's just important that we communicate with them early on and throughout the entire project, and that seems to work well for us.
Adam, did you want to ask your question, or should I continue with the chat questions?
Actually, I think my question is going to follow the next question. So please go right
Okay,
ahead.
great. Are you able to proactively install projects to address safety before crashes happen? If so, what factors do you look for?
Absolutely. For instance, we do, as our crash analysis showed, systemically crashes are happening, especially with pedestrians and bicyclists, at the intersections where in crosswalks. And you can see in these pictures, on the slide here, just how narrow and how dense the urban environment is in Hoboken. So one of the things we do is we try and daylight as many intersections as possible, to help really improve visibility and reduce the frequency of conflicts between pedestrians, and drivers can also see when they're approaching the intersection if there's another car coming on the other approach. And so this is one way that we're trying to proactively address some of these safety issues.
I'll follow up on that a little bit. I think Greg, I had mentioned a question before about near misses and whether Hoboken's going to be looking into maybe using some of the technology that's available to try and look at, crashes are of course the most important, but those times where the cars just barely miss each other, to try and be proactive. I don't know if you're using, I'm familiar with Wavetronics and Myovision, some other tools that are available to maybe look into those areas.
Yeah, as we look at the Willow Ave project, we're hoping to use near miss detection on that project. So that'll be something that in the future, we'll be able to look at how effective that is, that type of technology, and really making the project more beneficial.
I actually have had a question about this slide that you've got up, that pledge that you have. I think you said there were a couple of hundred people. How did you get the word out about it? What has been the reaction to it? Are you getting any side benefits? Those people who sign a pledge are probably generally going to be more active in the issues that are related to it, right?
Yeah, so the pledge is you can sign electronically on our website, vzhoboken.com. So it's easily accessible. We promoted it through social media, and it's something that in the future we hope that we can incorporate into different types of processes that the city already has control over. So, for instance, when someone signs up for a parking permit, they'll have a requirement to sign the pledge. And that helps, also improve the awareness of some of the things the behaviors that are mentioned in the pledge, and expands the audience of people that we're reaching with this pledge.
Very cool. Another question?
There is a follow-up question. You mentioned having community support. Did you engage in any deliberate marketing / education to create community-wide enthusiasm, particularly early on?
Yeah, we had for the Vision Zero action plan, we had the initial scope was to do in-person engagement, but of course we had that was right during the COVID pandemic, so we had to transition to online engagement, and we really were able to engage with the community in a different way that was new for us, but actually worked out well. We had a map that people could share their concerns directly on a map. And we have very targeted social media posts that the city and our community partners, are able to push out. And then we also have, through our task force, trusted members of the community that can go out. For instance, the Housing Authority. We have the director of the Housing Authority on our task force, and he's able to engage with the residents of in his community. The school district is on the task force as well. So it's definitely something that we try to leverage through our task force, these trusted community members, and it's something that we're hoping to do more moving forward. We did it with the speed limit campaign. We have electronic ads on all of our EV charging stations, all the trash cans. A lot of trash cans in Hoboken have ads as well that are promoting the 20-mile-per-hour speed limit campaign. And so we're really trying to find ways to reach the community in a more widespread way, in addition to targeting people through our task force.
Excellent, thank you. And one more, just a comment here. Up in Rochester, Viva has near miss technology that we are exploring in Rochester. We also learned about Safety View from GM and INRIX at AMPO Symposium last week. Just a little comment there.
Thanks.
Cool. I had another question. Sorry if I keep asking too many, but I'm curious what the response has been from other folks in the traffic safety field, other agencies around the country. You've done a lot of work here. I imagine you're getting a lot of interest because of the success. Are you, picking up ideas from other jurisdictions? Or are you giving, them some ideas about, how's that working in terms of getting the word out, but also taking in some of those ideas?
Yeah, we are a member of the National Association of City Transportation Officials, NACTO. So there's a great network. We look across the river to New York City, and go out and we do field trips to New York City, where we go out and we look at projects that New York City's implemented, and see if we can adapt them to Hoboken. We have the City of Jersey City is part of our task force, and we work closely with them. And then we're also part of a peer exchange program through the Federal Highway Administration for Vision Zero Cities with the City of Boston. So we're looking at what we can learn from Boston and what we could potentially teach them as well. And both of our mayors, the mayor of Boston and the mayor of Hoboken, met on a call and kind of laid out some of their expectations for that. And we hope that that's a relationship that we can sustain because we have a lot in common with some of these cities.
Very cool. I don't see any more questions.
Nope,
Yep.
That's the end of the chat questions. Thank you very much for all the great responses.
So I think we're gonna close it out then, unless there are any last second comments before we do. Let's share a picture of the speed limit signs on trash cans. I'm sorry if I missed that. Was that in the presentation?
I just mentioned it. I don't have
Okay.
any pictures on my presentation, but yeah, I mean, it's something that it's on Google Street View, but I can share if there's an opportunity afterwards.
Yeah, that'd be great. Are they on the VZ Hoboken website, or maybe?
They're not, but we can add them.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Love to see those. Okay. Any other questions or comments, Stephanie, before we?
No, that was the last one. The trash can question.
Thank you, Greg. This has been an awesome presentation. I hope everyone learned a lot of information about it, and we'll visit the VZ Hoboken website. I know I want to take another look at it. I think it's been really great. We're going to have, for the folks who are here and want to get an APA certification credit, I think that information is also in the chat. And you're free to visit NYMTC.org to get more information on that. And we're going to have another session on June 12th at noon, which is a Wednesday, on the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission presenting the Evolving Mega Region, Revisioning Freight Development and Mobility in Eastern Pennsylvania. And we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you, everyone. And thank you again to Greg. Take care.